Buckingham Palace had always stood as a symbol of tradition and splendor, but on this warm spring afternoon, it shimmered with a new kind of magic. The manicured lawns, usually reserved for state functions and summer receptions, had been transformed into an oasis of learning, laughter, and lilacs. For today, King Charles III and Queen Camilla were hosting a garden party unlike any other, a celebration not just of nature, but of knowledge. Dubbed the Education Garden Party, the event was the royal couple's tribute to educators, students, and lifelong learners across the nation. Invitations had been sent to teachers who had gone above and beyond, to school children who had triumphed against the odds, and to innovators shaping the future of British education. This was no ordinary royal gathering. This was a pageant of possibility, under the generous shade of ancient oaks and the scent of blooming roses. A new kind of royal welcome. The gates of the palace opened early, as lines of schoolchildren and their teachers streamed in, their eyes wide with awe. Some clutched notebooks for autographs, others whispered excitedly, pointing at the palace's gleaming facade. It wasn't every day they found themselves in the presence of royalty, and certainly not in such a joyful, interactive environment. Near the garden's entrance, Queen Camilla personally greeted a group of librarians and literacy advocates, her blue silk dress swaying as she leaned in to ask about their latest initiatives. Her lifelong passion for reading was well known, and today she glowed with purpose. King Charles, meanwhile, stood by a solar-powered science booth, where a group of teenagers from a rural comprehensive school were demonstrating a prototype of a water purifier they had designed in chemistry class. He asked thoughtful questions, clearly delighted by the innovation. His interest in sustainability and the environment aligned perfectly with the theme of education that prepared young people not only for exams, but for the future. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Garden Rooms of Learning. The garden had been divided into themed learning rooms, each one dedicated to a different aspect of education. In the Literacy Grove, wooden benches and beanbags were scattered beneath a canopy of cherry trees. Authors read aloud from children's books, and students performed short scenes from Shakespeare and contemporary plays. Queen Camilla joined in a lively discussion about how literature builds empathy in young readers. Over in the STEM sanctuary, robots zipped across mini obstacle courses, and students from a coding academy helped elderly guests try out virtual reality headsets. "Now that's a first," chuckled a retired headmaster, swiping at virtual butterflies. The creative arts corner throbbed with music and color. Pupils painted on easels while a youth orchestra played a composition written by a 12-year-old prodigy from Leeds. King Charles, a longtime supporter of the arts, tapped his foot appreciatively and later offered a few words of encouragement to the young composer, who could hardly believe he was speaking with the king. And then there was the Global Garden, celebrating education from around the Commonwealth. Colorful booths represented schools and cultures from Canada to Kenya, India to the Caribbean. Children taught one another songs and games from their countries, the air filled with a delightful mix of languages and laughter. A pause for tea, a moment for thanks. As the afternoon sun reached its golden peak, long tables set under rose-draped pergolas welcomed guests for the quintessential garden party treat, tea. But the scones and finger sandwiches were not the only things being served. The atmosphere was filled with heartfelt conversations, a head teacher from Liverpool swapping ideas with a curriculum designer from Ghana, a shy student finding the courage to explain her science project to a university dean, a parent sharing tears of gratitude with the special education teacher who had changed her son's life. King Charles and Queen Camilla moved from table to table, listening with intent, laughing warmly, and nodding thoughtfully. Their presence wasn't ornamental, it was deeply participative. As they sat down with a group of students from an inner-city academy, one boy nervously asked King Charles what school was like for him. The king smiled. "I was quite the daydreamer, I must admit. More interested in drawing maps of imaginary kingdoms than paying attention to math. But thankfully, I had teachers who saw the potential, not the distraction." Camilla added, "And I used to get lost in books, still do." That's the beauty of education. It never leaves you. Even when the classroom is far behind, the lessons stay with you. A living library. One of the most talked about attractions of the event was the living library, where people could borrow a person for a 15-minute conversation instead of a book. Each living book wore a badge with a title: Refugee turned teacher, autistic innovator, dropout to doctor, single mom success story. The king and queen each checked out several living books. Camilla listened intently to a former inmate who had turned his life around through an adult literacy program. Charles spoke at length with a climate scientist who had failed his GCSEs twice before discovering his passion. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Their presence underscored the day's message: education is not a straight line, and every path has value. Royal reflections and future promises. As the afternoon waned, the crowd gathered around a small stage set up under the wisteria arch. Queen Camilla, ever graceful and composed, stepped forward to speak first. Today, she began, "We have seen the real heartbeat of our nation, the curiosity of a child, the wisdom of a teacher, the spark of a new idea. Education is the most beautiful garden we can grow, one that yields not only knowledge, but compassion, resilience, and joy." King Charles then took the stage, his voice both warm and firm with conviction. "Education," he said, "must never be treated as a luxury. It is the birthright of every child and the responsibility of every society. Let today not just be a celebration, but a commitment to nurture minds as tenderly as we do these royal gardens. For in the minds of our young people lie the seeds of the future, and it is our duty to help them grow." Applause rang out like birdsong. The king and queen stood, side by side, waving gently to the crowd, no longer just symbols of tradition, but active champions of change. A day to remember. As guests departed through the palace gates, many lingered to snap photos of the now famously transformed gardens. Students clutched goodie bags filled with books, science kits, and letters of encouragement. Teachers exchanged email addresses, already planning collaborations sparked by the day's conversations. Even the sky seemed to smile as the last rays of sun filtered through the trees. The air was filled with something more lasting than scent or sound: hope. For those who had walked the lawns of Buckingham Palace that day, it was not just a royal garden party. It was a reminder that education, in all its forms, is the greatest legacy a nation can pass on. And under the quiet watch of the rose bushes and whispering willows, a new tradition had begun, where royalty meets reality and dreams, like flowers, are free to bloom. Subscribe the channel to get such videos.